Well, good afternoon to you, one and all. We are grateful to God that He has blessed us to be able to come together. And we're on about, yep, there we go, 5 minutes early. I love this. I love this streaming system. Bless His holy name. Um, and so we're on, and we came on just a little bit early. That way we can give everyone an opportunity. I see all of you. You're beginning to come on now to the event that's going to take place. It's the Sound of Blackness, and we're going to deal with it from a pastoral perspective. And so we just want to welcome you. We're asking that you would share. And in doing so, we will be able to have a very meaningful conversation, a very meaningful dialogue, one with the other. This is overwhelmingly important. I was sharing with the pastors who are backstage at this particular moment that many times in our history, there's a lot of where we've come from. It's a lot of where God has brought us from, the things that He has brought us through that are lost, that really are not exposed to our people. And the one thing and I have to give, hey Lisa, how are you? Pastor Deacon Thomas, I see you. William, I see all of y'all coming on. Good to have y'all. Ayana, good to see you. Debbie Johnson, I see you guys as you are coming on. As you are coming on, please share. Please share. Wendy, thank you so much for being a part of our audience. I'm going to try to call as many names as I can. Pastor Peyton, man, it's good to have you with us. Sadie, how are you? I remember you from United back in the day. We're grateful to God for those of you that are coming on. Nisha, good to have you. Good to make sure you share. Make sure you share. We want to get this out to as many people as we can. Thea, good to have you with us on this afternoon. And Kim, we are looking so forward. Sister Brady, how are you? Good to have you. Good to have you. Good. Y'all don't know how excited y'all make. Kim, I see you as you're coming on. Make sure that you share. Make sure that you share. This is overwhelmingly important. We are going to have a very open and honest dialogue. I call it the sound singular of blackness because there is a common thread that runs through our Black experience. Gladys, good to see you. Thank you, Debbie, for sharing. Make sure you share. Make sure you share. That is overwhelmingly important because we understand that we're invading your afternoon and your time. But we just, Pastor Tatum, good to have you. Good to have you with us. Kim Logan, good to see you. And it is just good to have y'all on board with us. I'm going to do a quick introduction in another minute. And so that you will know those who are with us. Carletta, how are you this evening? Afternoon, make sure that you share. Make sure that you share because there's some rich nuggets. Sister Thomas, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. I love talking to everybody anyway. Y'all know how I do. Okay. Valerie, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. I appreciate that more than you'll ever know. I want to also welcome our YouTube audience. Those of you that are on Union's YouTube page. And if there's somebody who is on that page, if you would just text me and let me know that we're not having any technical difficulties in doing that. Thank y'all for sharing. I see you as you're sharing. I see you as you're bringing other people on to your chat as well. And so we're going to get started in about another 30 seconds. I am honored and I am grateful for Ethel. How are you? For those of you who are with us, these pastors are near and dear to my heart. It's not that I don't have YouTube is fine. Thank you, Ayana. I appreciate that. But there are some people who are in the trenches, not more than anybody else, but they are doing the work of ministry. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the difficulties that we have to deal with as Black pastors, what we have to go through in order to shape ministry. Lady Bowling, good to have you with us on this afternoon. Well, without further delay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to begin to my right, and move to my left. And what I'm going to ask the pastors to do is to introduce themselves and give us a little something about themselves. And I am going to start with the one and only Pastor Kenneth Simon. I'm bringing him on board right now. Can you introduce yourself and tell us some of the good stuff you do, and then we'll go to the next person.
Well, I'm not sure if I do any good stuff, but I know that the Lord is doing some. But I introduce myself as Pastor Kenneth Simon, pastor of the New Bethel Baptist Church here in the great city of Youngstown. I'm also moderator of the Northern Ohio Baptist District Association, and also serve on the Ohio Baptist General Convention. Chairman of the Community Mobilization Coalition here in the city of Youngstown. We are also chairing a community leadership coalition on education, dealing with some issues with education in the state of Ohio. And just recently, we know that we've been dealing with the police reform, and we've been facilitating the Next Steps Coalition on police reform here in our Greater Youngstown community. We know it's election season, so I'm putting on that hat as chairman of the Community Mobilization Coalition, who does voter registration, voter education, and voter mobilization, because there's a long history of why we have to empower our people through the voting process. So I'll stop there. But my love is, of course, pastoring the New Bethel Baptist Church. Besides Union Baptist, they're the greatest church on the planet.
That was good. That was good. That was a good move on your part. The Lord is with you. Okay. I have another gentleman, Pastor Tod Johnson, is with us. Give us an introduction of yourself.
Good afternoon to everyone. This is Pastor Tod Johnson. I am graced to serve at the Second Baptist Church, a house of hope in Warren, Ohio, the world's greatest church, located at 1510 Main Avenue. It's the only church located at 1510 Main Avenue, and that's why it's the best. Grateful to serve with the Northern Ohio Baptist District Association with my moderator, Pop Simon, and so grateful to have him. And by the way, we have the Queen this year. You know, we won the Queen contest this year. Our dear sisters did a wonderful job raising funds for mission and ministry. And we appreciate that. I work at the Focus Building, which is a community hub in the Warren, on the east side of Warren. I just started a program called Black Boys Read, which is a virtual reading program that is doing a great job and just giving me all kind of new life with these young men enjoying and engaging in literacy development and reading comprehension. I sit on the board of United Way, Trumbull County, work in the Warren Civil Service Commission with our police and fire, testing and hiring. And wherever I'm needed, I just try to be of good use to our community. So I'm pleased and privileged to be a part of this. Let me get a big preacher word, auspicious occasion.
Big.
I'm trying to get a Dr. Sullivan word out, you know. So grateful to be on the panel, and thank you, Dr. Harrison.
All right. I have a good friend of mine. We kind of go back to the days of Midland, Pennsylvania, Dr. Richard Wingfield. Introduce yourself, sir.
Well, grace and peace from God our Father and Lord Jesus Christ. It's good to be on here. Thank you, Pastor Harrison, for this invitation. I'm Pastor Richard Wingfield, Unity Baptist Church of Braddock, Pennsylvania. I'm the greatest church this side of heaven. I had to put that in there. I am the moderator of the Allegheny Union Baptist Association, greatest association this side of heaven. Also the Western Region Vice President for the Pennsylvania Baptist State Convention. Working diligently within the community with along the same lines as Pastor Simon, as far as voter registration and in the struggle there with respect to police issues and what have you in our area. And we are just glad to be on here. Shout out to those of you who are on from Farrell, Pennsylvania, my home.
Thank you so much. Now, the next person that I'm getting ready to introduce don't need no introduction. He is my best friend, and I'm grateful to God to have him in my life. He is from the great city of Toledo. Pastor Thomas, welcome to the group, and go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Well, good afternoon to everybody, and to, of course, my president, Pastor Harrison. Thank you for having me amongst these giants of men. I'm gonna practice "Blessed are the brief" that I may be invited back. So, I pastor in Toledo. I pastor the City of Zion Church for 21, 22 years now. I became the chairman of the board of trustees for the Neighborhood Health Association this week, which oversees a $12 million annual budget. And I serve currently as the customer service director for the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship International. So thank you so much for including me amongst these giants.
Thank you so much, my friend. And last but not least, the one, the only. I'm just going to let him come in his own way. We are grateful to God for Pastor Vincent Peterson. Come on, sir. Go on and give us an introduction like only you can.
Sound like you want a sermon, but I ain't gonna do that. But I'm Pastor Vincent E. Peterson, the first, because there is a second. Amen. I am the proud pastor of Providence Baptist Church in Akron, the Bad Church, blessed and delivered, and doing multiple things. I'm actually the vice president, Trumbull County Minister Alliance. I am on the Drug and Mental Health Board here in Warren, as well as on the Wing Foundation. I'm part of the Attorney General's Committee to look at reforming police. Also the creator and presenter of what is called the New Jack Officer, which is a training that we do to teach police officers across the state of Ohio how to deal strictly with African-American males. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you brothers and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate you more than you know. Of course, I'm Pastor Harrison. I am the proud pastor of the Union Baptist Church on the north side of Youngstown. I had to throw that in there. That was one because the bishop of the south side is already here with us in the person of Pastor Simon. I am the president of the Ohio Baptist State Convention. I am the moderator of the Eastern District. I am the board chair of the Ohio Organizing Collaborative. And I'm on stuff and I do stuff, and the stuff I do is what I do. Okay. And I have brought these gentlemen together so that we can have an open and honest conversation about race, racism, how it has impacted us. And I think we need to just have that conversation. So here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this in reverse order. I am going to come to Pastor Peterson first. And I want to ask you this question. And again, we're only going to be on here for an hour. And so we need to make sure that we can be as concise in our answers as we possibly can. I want to know, Pastor Peterson, and this question goes to everybody. I want to know how your parents dealt with racism and how they dealt with it has rubbed off on you. Pastor Peterson?
One of the things growing up, we there?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I grew up in somewhat of a diverse neighborhood. But my parents, especially my dad, in working in the field that he did, experienced a lot of negativity that we contributed to race. And so watching my father confront this, and my dad was what you would call a confrontational person. He never backed down from conflict, things of that nature. And Pastor Harris, you knew my father. So he would take a stand on what he believed. Now, my dad was one of those individuals. He did not believe in allowing people to make you mad, because he felt that if they made you mad, they would control you. So he was one of those people, when he dealt with issues, always tried to think his way through, so he could convey what he wanted you to hear, what he wanted you to understand. So when I look at it, I look at it from the standpoint of he was a man who stood for what he believed, and he didn't care whether it was black or white. He didn't care whether it was family or foe. He presented what he thought concerning particular situations, and especially those who came, who dealt with a race issue. He taught us and he had 3 boys, that nobody was any better than what we were. But he also taught us, because of racism and because of prejudice and biased behavior, he felt that his boys had to work even harder in order to move forward in this world. And because of that, he didn't allow us to have a lot of excuses, because, like I said, he would try to create obstacles and hindrances without excuse to do what we needed to do.
Thank you so much, Pastor Thomas.
Yes, sir. I am the product of activist, I will say, parents. My mother was born in Yonkers, New York, raised in Tarboro, North Carolina. And my father was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and then migrated to Wilberforce or Dayton, Ohio. So we were raised, I was raised as with an activist mindset, if you will, based upon their experiences in the South. My mother would travel to the South every year and had experiences. My mother says that she was the original Rosa Parks. Now, I don't know how that to be true and all of that, but nevertheless, those stories we were taught growing up. And I remember as a child going to the University of North Carolina to hear Julian Bond speak. So my mother made sure that we were conscious, socially conscious, and aware of our history. I'm a history minor in college, and it is continued. So that has shaped my mindset as it relates to how I do life now. So you asked, I think I answered the question.
Yes, you did. Pastor Wingfield.
I grew up also in a kind of diverse community, but I am aware of the racism that my parents had to deal with. I'm not confirmed this, but I am told that when my father pastored in Sharpsburg, Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh, that he was one of the main ones responsible for integrating a restaurant right there in Sharpsburg. I remember very vividly my father running for the school board, even in Farrell, Pennsylvania, and it got back to me that somebody had said, I wouldn't mention who they are, but somebody had said, one thing is for sure, they are not going to have Wingfield as a school board director there in Farrell, Pennsylvania. So I remember those things very vividly. My mother was actually the first and only Black teacher that was hired in the Rankin School District when it was Rankin School District, which is now the Woodland Hills School District. And so those things, hearing those things and going through some of the things that I've gone through has really shaped my thinking, shaped my ministry. My father was very social justice in his presentation, and I've gained some of that from his preaching and what have you. And so, yeah, that has played a significant part in my life.
Pastor Todd.
Yes, sir. My mother is a product of Yazoo City, Mississippi. And even in her day, she was still not allowed to be born in a hospital. She had to be birthed in a home there down in the city. And we took frequent trips down there to see family. And my father, by way of Virginia and then West Virginia, his side of the family, overcame quite a bit with his grandfather being a pastor in the Warren area for many years and well respected. Now, I'd say one thing, like many others, I was raised in a more integrated, society and neighborhood. And due to the ethic of my family, the general feeling was that hard work and determination would often get you over the barriers, and not to let anything or anyone stop you from what you have worked hard for. Not so much feel entitled to, but what you have worked hard for. I think the shaping of that reality and watching my parents work so very hard to create a bright future for us, and then of course, you know, our children, is to see the regression of the culture that they had so hoped would progress alongside of their hard work, so that we are back fighting some of the same battles 50 years ago, in my age and below, that even the hard work ethic does not always put you in a favorable light with those who still uphold prejudice and racist values. So I think that I'm impacted not directly by racism, or they don't have any stories of certain things, but knowing how hard they worked and seeing that there are still other paths and issues that need to be addressed actually helps to shape a lot of what I have opened my eyes to see as an adult and a father now.
Thank you. Pastor Simon, you need to unmute
myself. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. My parents, particularly my dad, played a key role in influencing and shaping my response to racism, because he was a activist, and here in the local community, as well as nationally, on the national level, with the civil rights effort back in the 60s, part of the civil rights movement with Dr. King. He marched with King in Selma March back in the 60s. He was one of the chant leaders in the march. He was always at the forefront of the struggle. Matter of fact, when King was assassinated, my dad did the local service here at Stambaugh Auditorium. Thousands were packed there to give a message of hope and in the midst of despair for the people who have been affected by the slaying of our fallen civil rights leader. My father has always been on the forefront of the fight against racism and against injustices against people of color. Like Wingfield, my father was on the school board, and somehow there was violence and all that kind of stuff in the erupted at football games, and so the school board members, him and Ralph Clark, were assigned to go to a football game to keep the peace, try to keep the peace, and somehow something broke out. They were trying to break it up, but my father got arrested by the police injustly, and so we, because he was there on assignment, they tried to arrest Ralph Clark, and my father stepped in and said, he's here to keep the peace, and they said, we shut up, we'll arrest you too, and they arrested him. He went to jail, and from that, he got released, but there was a protest against the Vindicator. He led a protest against the police department. We got threatening calls at our house about killing this, N-word. And then eventually they did bomb our house back in the early 70s, and the house was bombed. We had people from the Freedom Incorporated for 2 months guarding our house with rifles and shotguns because there was threat on my father's life. And so I just grew up in the front row watching all this stuff. And but my father was not afraid. He was just going to be bold with his leadership and fighting for the rights of his people, not only in that arena, but it created him and another white pastor began the leadership of the interracial clergy dialogue to try to help deal with the racial issue from the faith perspective. And I've been a part of that effort since then, and that's where we got the Martin Luther King Planning Committee. So that's just a brief history of how I got influenced by my father, and my own personal stories, just dealing with watching Dr. King as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, all the way up till he was assassinated, and his life impacted mine just like my father's.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let me say that we want to welcome those of you from Florida, Texas, and Michigan who are watching with us on this afternoon. We are grateful to God, especially Texas. Texas has said, hello, Texas is in the house. So we're grateful to God for that. For those, if you do have any questions that you would like to ask these men of God, now you have to remember, this will be over with at 4 o'clock. So if you have some questions for them, you need to do like Jesus told Judas. You need to do it quickly. Okay, so please, ma'am, please, sir, if you have any questions that we can possibly pose to them in this period of time, and we will note the questions if we're not able to do so. And so when the next time comes around and these gentlemen are kind enough to give me an hour of their time on a Sunday, we will do this again. Okay. I'm going to start with Pastor Simon. I'm going back the other way. Okay. The question I have is, what has made life worse for African Americans? I knew you would get that one.
Yeah. I think what has made life worse for us is not something external, but something internal in our own community, because we've forgotten the struggle and we've kind of assimilated ourselves into this new culture and forgotten our history. And it's been said that people who have forgot or don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And the civil rights movement of the 60s, brought us a long way. The accomplishments of the civil rights movement did something phenomenal for African Americans and people of color across this nation. What has made things worse is a generation that has forgotten. And particularly in the area of voting. The people that we're talking about suffer, bled, died for the right to vote and to give us a voice. And so that we can make change in our local communities as well as nationwide, statewide and nationwide. And for some reason, there's a loss of that history, and then there's an apathy where people don't see the value and the importance of voting. And what makes things worse for us is that we don't exercise the God-given right that the others fought for and bled and died for. We don't exercise that God-given right and allow others to control, therefore, our destiny. And that's why we ended up like with the last 4 years of craziness, is because we just don't we've forgotten. And then people don't. It used to move people when you say that people fought, bled, and died for the right to vote. It used to move people. Now that doesn't mean anything. It's what's in it for me. And so that's sort of kind of what's making things worse for us as a people, because we've lost the tremendous value of the history of our struggle here, and that kind of hinders us from taking control of our destiny now and getting involved and making a difference in our politics.
Pastor Todd?
Bouncing off Pops and his answer, not just the forgetting of our history and the apathy regarding it, but we have in many ways fallen in line with the popular notion that we ought to move on from our history. And in our attempts to have the type of dialogue and interaction with others, including our white brothers and sisters who are uncomfortable with those realities and truths, we have often stunted ourselves and started to spout their party line about the realities past and present, which actually makes it unpopular and uncomfortable for us to speak about our own truth. And when you have tried so hard to engage in a way that actually causes you to deny your own reality, now you really don't know what reality is anymore. And even in our discussions with others who may say they want to be allies with us, they will first ask for certain concessions in conversation before we can even move forward. And we often accept those concessions. And then we start speaking according to that dynamic. For instance, the media, fake media, all of that. Well, the media didn't become fake until it started highlighting Black oppression and Black Lives Matter. Then it suddenly became fake when certain issues that were typically brushed to the side were pushed to the forefront. And beyond that, the lack of interdependence upon one another, where, as Dr. King said towards the end of his life, he feared that he had integrated his people into a burning house. And the more we gained by having access to other areas, the more we lost the desire to interact with one another, where you saw much of our economic and community strength and base erode as we all ran to the suburbs, the malls, whatever. Meanwhile, mom and pop, house and business, it took a toll on them. And the neighborhood I serve in, and many of you do, reflects that. A lot of stories about what used to be, and you can almost pinpoint it back to integration being accomplished. And once integration is accomplished, people have a lack of taste for being around the communities that actually made us who we are. And then when you don't have that value, now you have the violence, now you have the drugs, now you have lack of trust in one another. As they said, feel like the white man's ice cube is colder than your own. And now we will not do business and interact with each other in the way we would. And that leads to a whole litany of other issues.
Pastor Wingfield.
He needs unmuted.
Oh. There you wait a minute. Hold on. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Gotcha. I got it.
There you go.
There we go. I'd have to piggyback off of what Pastor Simon and Pastor Johnson has stated. The further you are from the struggle, the more likely you are to forget who brought you over. And I think that is an issue that we are dealing with within our own community. With all the good that integration has done, integration has also caused us to become lax. And it has caused us to really not teach our own history. The truth of the matter is we now have people who are trying to rewrite our history because we have not fully taught our history. And so that is an issue that I really think is plaguing our community. I think we need to go back to educating our own. We need to go back to the point where we talked about going back. I understand that, but there is a sense in which we need to go back to start teaching our young people what our history was, what the struggle was all about. If we don't do that, we end up with a Eutychus problem. If you remember in Acts chapter 20, Eutychus fell out the window, and a whole lot of our young people are falling out of the church house and falling into the crack house, falling into illicit relationships, falling into some other stuff that is out there. And we have also bought into this hyper individualization society where it's all about me, my, and mine. As a result of that, we don't have that trust, as Pastor Johnson talked about. We don't have that trust and that's why we end up putting labels on people, because we don't have that trust. This is what Howard Thurman talked about, where there was contact without fellowship. We have contact with them, but we don't really fellowship with them. As a result, since we don't fellowship with them, we kind of label them because we are addressing our own fears. And so I think that will answer the question for you, from my perspective.
Thank you. Yeah. Pastor Thomas?
Yes, sir. Again, so much has been said that I agree with. I'll try to sum this up in a capsule form. I would say what has made us worse is isolation and insulation. We have, I believe, failed to deal with the things in a communal and a corporate and maybe a tribal way, as I believe we are a communal and tribal people. And I think we have begun to practice some of the things of the other cultures, negating and neglecting our own rich history. We have failed to share oral tradition, bad, good, indifferent. We got to tell the stories so that bad, good, indifferent, we are aware of the story so that we don't have to repeat some of the same negative parts of the story. But if you don't know it, you definitely will become prey or privy to it. I'll say this and then I'll be done. When I was meaning about communal, if you just look at the structure, the way houses are built now, they are not built with a community in mind. If you just look at the structure, there used to be front porches where people could sit on the front porch and commune with the people walking by. Now we have bigger backyards and smaller front porches. And that's not accidental. I believe that's very intentional. And if we don't see some of those things, so our efforts have to be more intentional in making sure that we share our story.
Love it.
Pastor Peterson.
I think a big part of the problem is that we have, and I think as Dr. Simon said, Pastor Todd, and the panel itself, we have been extremely complacent. We've been lackadaisical in our approach. And if you don't mind, I want to make an analogy that I tell police officers when I address them. Part of the problem is we've always been reactive and never proactive. I've been guilty even within dealing with certain aspects of history and making sure that our young people are aware. I know that now we have some things that we've instituted during service that we want our kids to know their history, speak about their history, talk about their history. But in reality, we've seen a lot of things that we chose to ignore. We've chose to kind of push them on the back burner, kind of hoping and wishing and might that they would get better and never fully addressing them. Anytime you're going to be reactive instead of proactive, it's going to put you behind the eight ball. And so I think in certain aspects, we have been too slow to move on certain things. We've seen some issues. We have not addressed them. And anything that you don't address ultimately overwhelm and consume you. And I think that's been one of the issues that we're dealing with now.
Thank you. Now, Pastor Peterson, I'm going to come back to you. We've gotten a couple of questions, so I'm going to forget one of mine, and I'm going to ask this one, and then we'll go around. Do you think other races don't believe in Black Lives Matter because we're still killing each other?
I'm going to be honest, no. I don't think it's ironic that you said that. I was having a conversation with some guys not too long ago. I don't believe that's why they don't believe in that Black Lives Matter. I think they refuse. A lot of people don't see what we see. Once again, I was having some conversations with some officers, and I don't think they fully understand because they have not experienced what we have experienced and what we have went through. I really don't think it has anything to do with us, even though that doesn't help. I think a lot of times, in my opinion, that becomes an excuse to excuse away what we're really trying to say and portray when we speak of Black Lives Matter. Does it help the cause that we're killing one another? No, it doesn't. But I don't think the racists generally see that as a catalyst for why they are not supporting Black Lives Matter. I think a lot of it, they either choose to ignore it or they really don't fully understand what we're trying to convey and what we're saying.
Thank you. Pastor Thomas?
I think that I agree with Pastor Peterson. I don't think that is the large part of the problem. I think the large part of the problem is historical. I don't believe they've ever seen people of other colors, hues, as good as them or equal as them because they're continuously taught that they're better. I don't think they ever have seen people as, I'll go far as to say, as human beings or less than human beings. History will support this, that if you see another human being as a human being, there are certain things you will not do to them. And history shows that some of the things that have been done to us by them reflect that they don't even see us as human beings. And so I do not think it helps the cause that we are doing some of the things to ourselves, but I think the root of the cause is found in history.
Pastor Wingfield.
I agree with what's been said. I think that's their excuse that they use, as Pastor Peterson said. We know that there's always been a fear of Black people rising, and that's why you got the voter suppression going on now. That's why you have other issues. It's really, when you really look at it, it's really, we know it's a skin problem. It's also a sin problem. It's a refusal to admit that all are created in the imago Dei, all are created in the image of God. And when you do not recognize that myself as a person of color, as an African American, is created in the image of God, then you choose to deny who I am as an individual. And therein lies another aspect of the problem, I believe.
Pastor Todd.
You know, that thinking and reasoning is a perfect example of the snappy, cliched culture that we live in now, where we look to explain away and deflect from deep historical issues. And unfortunately, many of our people have picked up that party line and say things every time there is violence in the urban or Black community. Well, when will Black lives matter to Black people? When we all know the reality is that those are not crimes of self-hatred within a race, but crimes of proximity. White people kill white people. Asian people kill other Asians. Black people kill other Black people in the highest percentages, respectively. And that's why we have to be careful of what banners and cliches we pick up as our own and use, because it's really a chicken or the egg kind of a situation. The fact of the matter is, the historical trauma against Black people has created the Black chaos within Black communities, not the other way around. We didn't start destroying ourselves and then white people decided we weren't worth anything. They've spent centuries, thousands of years disrespecting, enslaving, developing entire scientific theories that have been since debunked but are still believed in, that still extend into scientific fields and medical fields right now. They still extend right now. There are still doctors that believe we don't feel pain like white folk do, and we'll be treated indifferently. So because of that mistreatment, traumatized people will traumatize each other. And that's the real issue. And again, that's another truth, that those individuals who would use a statement like that, and then again, we adopt it and we start pointing fingers at each other instead of at the real issue, which is systemic and historical racism.
Pastor Simon.
Yes, sir. I agree with all the gentlemen that have spoken. I hear stuff like that all the time, and I hear from our Caucasian brothers, but also hear it sometimes from people in our community. And we have to see this thing in the bigger picture, because it's systemic. It's actually its design, the poverty that is concentrated in inner city communities, the lack of quality education. There's a healthcare. There's a whole lot of issues that go into why we have struggles inside our community. The truth of the matter is, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, it's not us just killing each other. That happens in every community, like Pastor Todd said. But we're talking about the people that are supposed to be protecting us. The people that are supposed to be protecting the citizens. And there's a disparity in how certain lives matter on one side of the track and people on the other side of the track. When you are taking a person who kills 8 people in a church, and you go arrest him and you take him to lunch. But when when there's a suspected Black crime of a $20 counterfeit $20 bill, you end up dead. And so there is the issue of Black Lives Matter is that as far as the systems are concerned, it doesn't seem that Black lives matter because the way Blacks are treated, not only in the area of law enforcement, but in the area of housing, in the area of Economics, it's just as though Black lives don't matter according to the powers that be in the systems that are in place to keep us suppressed.
I have one more question, and this is going to be a good one, and I'm starting with Pastor Simon. These are questions from the audience. Do you think that interracial marriage, relationships, and children cause Black men and women to feel that they have made it and racism doesn't affect them now? I'm sorry.
I don't think that as a whole. I think that from a biblical perspective, I mean, I just think that marriage is something that is brought together by God, and so I can't choose who God picks for you. And Moses married an Ethiopian woman, and they got upset with him. But the issue is, I don't think that there's some people that may have that mentality, that because they're indoctrinated into another culture, and so now we look at it as, well, there's see, Black people and white people can get together. Right. But it should be that we now can identify with the struggles in each culture, rather than saying that there's because an African American, whether it's a male or a female that marries a white person, still has to remember who they are, and still has to identify with the struggle of their people and the history of their people. And it's an opportunity to actually teach and to educate to children, families, the other culture, what your struggle has been, and it's an opportunity to actually bridge that gap, because now you have people who are interacting in a family type situation, which now helps them to understand that culture, because we're brought together in a bond. What happens in the community is that we just don't come together and talk about it. You're forced to do it in a relationship, but in a community, we kind of like just stay over here, you stay over there. And in white communities, we say there's no racial problem, where Black people are taking a beating every day. I'll stop there.
I think it's both historical and it has some also like evolutionary aspects to it as well. There have always been markers of betterment, better positioning among oppressed peoples. I mean, you can go back to House Negro versus Field Negro. And while we have this idea that the House Negro is automatically arrogant and thinks he's better, most of them probably didn't really feel that way. They just understood they had to do their job just like anybody else would, and do it well, or they would be just under as much punishment as anybody else. But because of that caricature of the House Negro being the guy who goes along with everything and who will turn around and suppress his brother, then we start to assume that everyone who is in a position like that, whether it's being able to move into a neighborhood, get a white collar job instead of a blue collar job at a company, and then of course now with relationships and marriage, that they all have that. We have to be clear, some people do. And a part of that, again, comes with the concessions that come along with conversation. I have to go with the party line to prove that this is the ideal. But we're living in a world where there's always going to be black and white, but we're also seeing a whole lot more caramel, I'm sure, than when Reverend Simon and Reverend Harrison were younger. You're a little older than me, not by much, but you're a little older. So that's a market difference, seriously, even in a short period of time. And I'm saying that to make a point. It hasn't been that long. I'm not talking to two 90-year-old men who can say it's been different. They're not that much older than me. So it has been a market different just in the last few decades, but that's still evolving. So we are still going to have white and black, which means that the fact that there are many successful interracial couples, and we are grateful for that, because that does speak to the equality, that does not change the systemic and historical issues that we are dealing with now. And those persons just need to be cautious that they're still an exception, and nobody likes to be an exception, but you just are. And that's just a part of being a trailblazer and being in a different fashion that has been historically accepted. So it's helpful to be sensitive to the fact that just because you're getting along just great, and you can point to, I got both sides of the family, and I tell people back up on the bragging, because I'm so glad that you got white, black, Puerto Rican, this and everything else in your family, but that has not changed the reality of Black lives in America and across this globe. So at least be sensitive to that, and don't promote or present your personal experience as a systemic answer for everybody, because all of us ain't going to go out and marry white men and women and all this other stuff. It's not going to happen. There are still going to be racial problems. And truth be told, the one drop rule is still in effect. Since I'm the crazy young pastor, I'll just go on ahead and say it. The one drop rule is still in effect, and too many don't find out until that mixed child gets pulled over and we find out what color they are.
See, you about ready to make me leave out my chair, because the truth will set you free. Dr. Wingfield. Oh, hold on.
I did it again. I think Pastor Simon, Pastor Simon and Pastor Johnson really hit the nail on the head. We're always going to have that, shall I say, that pieces out there whereby, you have the interracial marriages and what have you. Don't forget your history. I think that's the major thing that Black men and Black women have to remember. Let's go back, because there's always been also this friction, if you will, between Black men and Black women. And that is the reality that has existed within our own community. And we have to recognize the fact that, where the rubber meets the road, we're in this thing together. We're in this thing together, and we have to make it work, because our children depend or will be affected by what is happening. There are documented instances of interracial kids having to struggle in school or what have you, because they are mixed.
Yep.
And they catch it from both ends.
Right.
And so the parents have to do a good job in raising them to understand what their heritage is all about. If there is the lack of teaching within the family, then you're going to have continued problems down the road.
Yep.
And we've seen that. There's documented evidence of that.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in and I'll add, I'll join the crazy young preachers, because while this is us, while we want this melting pot and it has its benefits, the reality of it is it's hard. I was told, don't bring one home. We were taught, and I just be honest. And my mother had this conversation with us, and here's why she said it. She said, because the children don't get a choice, and the product of the relationship, because the truth still is, and I think someone mentioned it, the one drop rule is still in effect, and you don't realize it until you have to deal with it. We will tolerate and accept almost anybody, but the other side does not do that nearly as much. And those children search for an identity. They struggle. They struggle academically. They struggle socially. And many of their struggle, they had nothing to do with. And unfortunately, I wish we lived in a society where we could love who we wanted to love, and that was it. But I think we must really teach and share the realities of, so that they can make an intelligent decision as to who they want to love, who they want to marry, who they want to mingle with, who they want to procreate with, so that they go in fully aware as best they can. So I hope I haven't said too much, but that's what I got.
Sounds good. Pastor Peterson.
Yes, sir. Man, this question is is so apropos for me because on last Saturday, my daughter married a white young man. Amen. But and it's great. I love the young man. I used to coach him. Truly a blessing. But I say this. I taught my daughter, listen, you didn't come up, he did. You're a black princess, black queen. So I've always taught my kids to value, as my father taught us, value who you are, know who you are. And we don't have to assimilate into another culture in order to feel like we are important. I can remember there was a particular pastor when I moved in, when we built our house in this neighborhood, and he saw me one day. He said, so are you the first black in your neighborhood? And I happened to be, but he went on as if the dialogue would be, man, you should feel privileged. No, I didn't feel privileged because I'm the first black in the neighborhood. I'm like everybody else. I worked hard. I deserved to be here. And I felt my value was not based on moving into the neighborhood of Caucasian people. Why should I feel like that? I felt my importance was given to me by my parents and the life that I've lived. I do think, but as Pastor Thomas would say, I do think our young people do have to be aware of the steps they're taking, even when, and this conversation I did have with my daughter, because I know at times, having spoke to other children or other parents, that the children of biracial parents, sometimes they do struggle because they're caught in between. But I also think that this next generation and those who are in interracial relationships, so forth, can also help to bridge, because they do have that ability to be able to communicate, dialogue with each other, and be able to share their personal feelings one to another in love. I think that's the biggest bridge that we have to overcome right now, is the fact of even getting people to dialogue and to listen. That's the first key. As a hostage negotiator, my job, everybody thinks, is to talk. It's not to talk. It's to listen. And then when I listen, I can discern and decipher some things that I can go back and give some opinions or some type of comments that would be relevant to help people move forward. But Pastor Keller, thanks for that question.
That's from the audience. Listen, we have 8 minutes left. That's what we have left, is 8 minutes. So if you can do this in 1 minute and 30 seconds per person, I'm going to see if this works out. And we're going to start with Pastor Peterson. What can we do collectively to educate our children?
Number one, I think with programs like Pastor Todd is doing, the READ program, I'm with Pastor Stanford, who has the ROPE program, Rite of Passages Education. I think we have to be, we have to voluntarily enter into training our children, educating them, and not just doing Black History Month. I'm Black all year long. So we need to make sure that we take steps all year long to educate our young people and to show them that they have true value. There's nothing like going to the barbershop, that's when I had hair, and getting a haircut to make me feel good about myself. When you start educating our young people and they know their worth, they can walk around knowing that they are important, and nobody can tell them anything different to separate them from that.
Yeah.
Pastor
I'll give some of my time back. I think what we have to do is start at home. I think whether you have two parents at home or not, it's not the number that you have at home, it's the quality of the one you have. And I believe that we have to start at home from the crib. Start pouring in, start reading. I participate with a Real Men Read program to elementary students here in Toledo. We've got to make sure that they have the basics from home. There used to be that the church, the community, and the school had the same conversation going on. That's not happening anymore. But one thing we can't control what they do in the community. We can't control what they do many times at the church, but we can control what we do at our house. And I think it's got to start out.
Pastor Wingfield.
Thank you, Pastor Harrison. I'm agreeing with everyone thus far. I think a legitimate right to passage program would be essential. I believe that a legitimate literacy program, life skills program, about mentoring program, tutoring, mentoring programs in our churches, also helping people to develop great communication skills.
Yes.
I think that is and I appreciate what Pastor Peterson said. I'm just going to add this caveat onto what he said. Silent and listen have the same letters. I'll drop it right there.
Do I get to drop the mic now or later? Pastor Todd.
I'm a systems and structure guy, and I believe that the community, the Black community in particular, and our churches, the Christian community, we have the tools, the knowledge, the history, all of that. What we often do not have is the same systemic strength that those opposing forces that have oppressed us. We have not structured and strengthened ourselves through collaboration. And sometimes, y'all know my spiel about even sometimes consolidation to create strong structures that are attractive and self-sustaining so that we can take all of this knowledge and present it systemically. Schools go on whether or not 50 kids show up that day or not. But sometimes our programs are so fragmented that once 2 or 3 families stop participating, we've lost the energy and the fire. And so we have to build stronger and more systemic and collaborative efforts with our churches. And the church, I always believe the Black church is the crux of this. We should be the foundation of this. We have the space, we have the people, oftentimes the money, even though we only got a little bit of it. But we have to create strong structure and systemic efforts at education, life development, economic empowerment, even family and home values. It has to be systemic the way we present it. And we're too piecemeal about what we do. So we have we got the teachers. We don't have a schoolhouse for them to teach in that is consistent as the secular world that we're often contending with. That's my part of how I feel we could add to that.
Pastor Simon.
Wow, I could just say ditto and sit down. Yes, I just think how can we educate our children is, first of all, we just have to take responsibility. We can't wait for and expect on the other side of the track or others to educate us about our history. And so that begins, I agree with Pastor Talmadge, starts in the family. And, there has to be some time of educating and not let Google educate our kids and not let Facebook and these other things educate our kids. We've got to take time and give them the real history of our people so they can know who they are, who we are as a people, and the struggles we've been through. Because the people who don't know who they are, don't know where they've been, don't know where they're going. And then, as Pastor Todd said, our churches used to be the place where we got our education, where we learned about ourselves, where we organized. I'm not against all the stuff that we do, the worship, the praise, all that, but there's a component that we're missing when we leave out educating our people, because we can't expect the schools to do it, and there needs to be something structured, and it doesn't have to be every church doing their own thing. We can make some collaborative effort where we are bringing people from our churches who are experts in certain areas and have our own institutions that are educating our people about who we are. And then, there's some simple things that we can do by just being mentors to people. That's an educational process, and we can help the process along. I have used my 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'm gonna stop.
You've done well. I'm proud of you. Okay. Let me ask the audience this question. Has this been helpful to you? Has this blessed you? And if it has, can you put that in the chat real quick, because I have 1 minute and then we will be done. I'm going to ask the pastors if you would please stay on for just a little while. We'll be backstage with you just to have a conversation with you. But one of the things that is coming up in the chat is a list of books that we can read from Black authors. Those that are a part of the OBSC understand clearly that oh God, this is the reason why I'm the host and not a guest, is because I am no longer reading white evangelical books. Now, however you want to read that, that's up to you. There are tons of Black authors from the Black experience that are able to provide materials for us. And so what I need you to do for me, gentlemen, in my time is up, to let's get a list of books together, because people are asking, so that we can provide that information to you from wherever you are. I want to thank each person, each pastor. You don't know what this has meant to me, for you to take this hour out of your crazy schedule to be a part of this. I'm seeing clearly that people are letting it be known that this is overwhelmingly helpful. Now, I'm letting y'all know this, that we probably won't come back together maybe for about a month or a month and a half, because I have other Black Lives Matter, not Black Lives, I have other Sound of Blackness things to do that are already scheduled. But I'll get it out to you far enough in advance to see if it fits in your schedules. To the audience from all over these United States, thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm going to put you backstage for a quick second, say a couple of things, and then I will be back to you in just a moment. Listen, these pastors have been phenomenal. They have given their wisdom, their knowledge, and their understanding. And I am grateful to God for those of you that took time out of your Sunday afternoon, your nap time, your TV time, your eating time, whatever that time is, to be a part of this. We will do it again soon, and we're going to have this same panel to come back again so that we can ask them the hard question. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But we want to ask them what is necessary so that we can make our community stronger, more educated, more resilient, and more determined. Okay. So listen, y'all have a blessed week in the Lord. Whenever your Bible study is on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever day it is, you make sure that you get there, because knowledge is power. Okay. And so the more you know, the more you grow, the more you can help somebody else. Listen, may God bless you and may he keep you is our prayer.